There are signings, there are rumors, and there could be a new seat that you have to plant in order to watch a Kansas City Chiefs football game. Matt Derrick's going to tell us all about it. We'll get to that right here on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. It's Hump Day, and that means Matt Derrick is here to tell us what we don't know and what we need to know and how we go forward. Thanks for making us your first listen. Check out the draft show, the NFL draft show, with yours truly and Eric Crocker for your second listen. We appreciate it because we're all free on all platforms all the time, everywhere we go, at all moments of the day. So check out the YouTube, like, sub, and hit the bell. Make sure you subscribe on the audio as well. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, and you can find the Athletic Matrix over at rogueapc.com. You want to use that code Locked On to get your special benefit. That will give you a nice discount. And then you can listen to the conversations with Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest and we'll go over what's coming because there's been some signings. There is plenty of rumors. And then there's this whole thing with the brand new building. We're going to get into it. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing pretty well, Ryan. I had to hit the Rogue Analytics Matrix pretty hard over this weekend doing a mock draft with some fellow beat writers. So that comes in very, very handy because you can really kind of figure out where some people are falling off the wagon when you're like, this guy doesn't quite have the skills that you need there.
Right? Yeah. They're
this is the guy that's falling through the cracks.
Right. That's my favorite part is it identifies some guys that you can take some nice value picks on. And
yep.
This is what I scream about every year, folks. It'll be fine. But they have a couple of things that they've gotten done since we last talked that actually I think changes the direction of what they have to do. One being Marquez Valdes-Scantling at the wide receiver spot and Ronald Jones at the running back spot. I know that they needed to upgrade both. How happy are you with the MVS signing? And I think we'll just go with MVS from now, right?
Yeah, that's going to be the easiest because I don't want to mispronounce his first name. And I, for whatever reason, continue to misspell and mispronounce his second and third names too. So I'm just terrible. But no, I like the signing, especially, after we saw the contract. I think it's a pretty team-friendly deal. I mean, the numbers sound big, but you know what? I mean, if he lives up to the contract, I mean, one, the Chiefs had a lot of flexibility there. I mean, this could be a 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year deal, really. And if it becomes a 2 or 3 year deal, it's because he's played really good football and the Chiefs can use him. So really like it. I mean, obviously he brings something that I think the team is lacking, especially in the departure of Tyreek Hill. He's a guy that can take the top of the field off. You've got that threat now that you need. I don't think that the wide receiver core is all the way there. I think they want another piece of the puzzle. But right now they've got, I think, the options there. They've got some choices. They've got some depth. So I think there's enough that Brett Veach can go into the draft now and even make some moves before the draft if he wants to, but he's not doing it from a position of weakness. I mean, he's doing it from he's got a receiver group that I think they'd be pretty comfortable with. It's just, I think they want a little bit more in there.
And I don't blame them. There's some rumors going around the position. We'll get into that here coming up in a little bit, folks. Stay tuned for that. But like you said, it rounds it out. You have a starting three now, right, that you feel you can start the season with. Do you have to supplement? Possibly. The question for me is supplementing the other big signing at 1 year at $5 million for Ronald Jones, a guy that they saw over the last couple of seasons, particularly in the Super Bowl against the Bucs. I question that fit at first. I'm coming around on it, but how do you like that pairing of RoJo and CEH? Because I'm not using anybody's names anymore, evidently.
We've got a lot of dashes out here, don't we? I mean, I've heard MVS and Juju Smith-Schuster, the Dash brothers, so we might have to just go with that.
I like it.
Yeah, there's things I like and I don't like about it. I mean, one is that unfortunately it probably means that the writing is on the wall for Darrell Williams. And I don't like that part of it because Darrell Williams has just been, I mean, they call him Mr. Consistent for a reason. I mean, He's done a little bit of everything. He's done everything I think that this team has asked of him. And so not to continue to be a part of it, I think is a tough break because he's been a really good teammate and a good player for this team. But Ronald Jones, I mean, he's an accomplished player. I mean, he's got a 1,000-yard season in his back. I mean, he's somebody that can do, I think, a little bit different things than maybe they have of anybody else on the roster. He's got a little bit more power element to him than Clyde does. And I think it's not exactly thunder and lightning, but ish. So I think there's a different flavor there. And that's what, another thing that Andy Reid likes in his running backs is, guys who can all do a little bit something different. Jones is definitely that. I mean, he can catch the football. He can run with a little bit of power. I think he probably fares pretty well, but I think he's also probably indicative of what are changes that are coming into the Chiefs offense that you just need to be ready for. I mean, I think that you might look at Ronald Jones right now and say, that's a guy that doesn't fit into the 2021 Chiefs offense real well. I think he's going to fit into the 2022 offense pretty well, though, because it's not going to be the same offense.
I like the way that you put that. I've said the same thing, but will you elaborate on your opinion about what that means specifically?
Yeah, I mean, when you don't have Tyreek Hill, you're going to have to do some different things. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And I think that the Chiefs, even last year, were a team in transition. I mean, what they did with the offensive line was part of that transition. And I think it's Andy Reid's kind of, admission to a degree that, the offense his offense has to continue to evolve. And in some ways, maybe they need to even go back to the future a little bit. So that's why I'm saying, what are things that, you need to do effectively right now in today's football? You need to run the ball more effectively than I think the Chiefs have done the last few seasons. And if they've got somebody like Jones that I think can give them a little bit more power option, do some different things, especially between the tackles and run behind that line of scrimmage, I think they can do some things to loosen up some defenses that's going to make it easier to throw the football. And that was the things that I think got them last year.
Yeah, I agree. I'm more in the loss of Darryl. I do think he will make a nice tandem with someone in the league. Just waiting to find out where that placement's going to be. But there are other things going on, and we have to check into some of those about what could be right around the corner. We'll do that after we hear from our new pals. You've heard us talk about these things before. These are Built Bars, and you have to take advantage of them. The new year is rolling, whether your resolution is or not, but these things are here to help you, whether they're a meal replacement or a substitute for something that you normally would take in, maybe isn't quite as healthy for you. All you have to do is try the puffs or try the marshmallow flavors or any of these, like the coconut almond, you have the toffee almond, all kinds of options for you that taste great. They taste like a candy bar. They provide the protein that you need, 130 calories on average, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein that you need to get through the day. And they're all covered in actual real chocolate. So you get a taste of what you're looking for as well. You can replace meals. You can actually supplement meals. You can do whatever you need to get through the day. And we have a special offer for you. Go to built.com and use our code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your order. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. So what we have to get into is what could be right around the corner. And like you said earlier in the first segment, Matt, it's not necessarily a done deal at the wide receiver core. We got some I don't like to call it rumor, because when you get it from a verified source or a journalist that you have seen break news before, evidently the Chiefs are still interested. They're still working some trade options for a legitimate starting level receiver that is somewhere else on another team. I don't know if that's Seattle or somewhere else. Does that surprise you that they would be interested in trying to pry someone away that isn't necessarily already on the trade block?
Doesn't surprise me. I mean, that's fits in the category of where there's smoke, there's fire. It certainly fits in with some things that I've heard as well, that that the Chiefs are not settled in that position, and that hey, the draft picks that they picked up from Tyreek Hill, I mean, gives them the flexibility to do some things. Now, where there's probably more rumor and speculation is who the targets could be, and right now I don't think we've got. I don't think there's really any firm reporting about who those targets are and who might be available. Chiefs are probably calling on a lot of different players. Doesn't mean those players are available or that the compensation would be realistic. I mean, if I'm Seattle and the Chiefs call for DK Metcalf, I'd probably say, sure, 2 first-round picks. What do you got? And it can't be 29 and 30. I want more than that. That doesn't mean it's going to be a done deal. So, yeah, but that fits in to me with what the Chiefs did with MVS. I mean, they're not trading. They wouldn't be going into negotiations for a trade from a position of weakness. They're not in a spot where they have to make a deal. I mean, yes, if they landed a receiver that would allow them to do what I think is their ideal, which is now Juju Smith-Schuster's your number 2, MVS is your 3, McColl's your 4, that's a stacked lineup. Doesn't mean they're going to be able to pull it off, but that's what they would love to be able to pull off.
Sure. And I think it's also a symptom of what we see in terms of the feedback on some of the top wide receivers in the draft, specifically Jameson Williams, with the really positive nature of his recovery. What I thought would be a player that would drop down to the bottom of the first, where he was attainable for Kansas City, especially with, the 29 over the 30 now. That evidently is going so well that he's getting pushed back up into the 10s. And that's just untenable in terms of the value that you have to trade for that. So I think while they have some other receivers that they're reportedly liking in this draft, Sky Moore is not a first round pick. I think there is a couple of other guys they like later in the draft as well that they can then supplement with. But like you said, if you have 4 deep that you can scare teams with, that's what you have to be able to do. So you can go a little bit of fire and ice, a little bit of power run, a little bit of 4 wide. And I think that makes a lot of sense for them. The question for me is the evolution that we talked about of the Reid offense. Does that mean more facets, or is it still trying to be what we've seen in recent years where 11 personnel is the base? Maybe you'll run out too tight from time to time, but you're really trying to do everything with 3 wide receivers on the field.
That's the thing. I don't think is going to change with Andy Reid too much. I mean, I think it's his personnel is what he likes to run. And yeah, I mean, we know the Andy Reid offense runs through a tight end, so he's always going to feature that in 12 and 13 and 14 personnel. I mean, there are always going to be some things that he likes to throw out there, but no, I mean 11's the base. I mean that's what Andy Reid feels like gives him his most flexibility. So I don't think there's anything. I don't think the things that we're the things we're going to see change in the offense are going to be anything drastic like that. But I mean, again, I think that it's probably a realization that this offense is going to have to be different this year with the personnel that they have. And you're going to just have to revamp and build the offense around that. I mean, in a sense, they've been building the offense around Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. Well, you're still going to be building it around 2 guys, but you're just going to have to kind of tinker with, that other third of the offense.
Yeah, the foundation's there. You're building the second level here at this point, trying to put a roof on it as well. And when it comes to the roof, you have to be able to defend it. And on the other side, there's a couple of things floating around. Apparently interest in trading with the Giants for Bradbury, who I think is very interesting because he is a better zone corner than he is a man corner. And it is pretty dramatic, to tell you the truth, in the way that the production falls down. A, are you surprised by interest in that particular player? And B, do you think that there's any possibility that we see not just a subtle shift, but a seismic shift in the way Steve Spagnuolo goes about this defense?
Yeah, it could be a signal of that, but to me, I think it's a little bit about the Chiefs just looking at what's out there. I mean, we've heard them connected to a couple of different corners. I mean, Bradbury is one, Stephen Gilmore is another possibility that the Chiefs have been connected to, and I think that is more than anything just fits in with the fact that the Chiefs believe there's probably in any given year a handful of potential targets that would really fit into what they want to do with their cornerbacks. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why that the Chiefs have not been one of those teams that goes out and spends a ton of money on the position, because each and every year, I mean, Brett Veach, that's probably the one position that I think that he has the smallest amount of targets that he feels are like going out and pursuing. Because one, I think that, he feels like that's a position where a lot of teams overspend on the cornerback spot. And for him, he feels like that the more important thing is the fit. How do they fit within the defense? That if you've got somebody you're paying a lot of money to, but it's not somebody that skill set meshes with what your defense does and wants to do, then it's not going to work. So, they're going to want some people that, and Spags is certainly willing to change up his coverages and what he does to fit his personnel. But I think it more than anything, to me, it's just reflective of the fact that those are a couple of guys that they think could come in and fit what they do and be affordable. If it's not, I mean, there's a possibility that either one of those deals gets done because it's just not going to be at a price point that the Chiefs are willing to part, whether it's cap or it's draft picks. So a lot of work still be to be done there. But again, you look back at the other moves that Brett Veach has made over the last week, with bringing in Deion Bush and signing a Luke Barku. I mean, that gives you some depth and it gives you some flexibility. So once again, if he makes a trade, it's not from a position of weakness, and they also don't have to reach. I mean, if they don't get a deal that they like for the player they want, you wait until the draft and see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's what we're about to watch happen. The question is, does it get done or not? Now, there's also a topic that we have to talk about because it's going to take a whole lot of parts to build this next thing. You can get some of those from our pals and our longtime sponsors at Rock Auto, but could there be a different place to watch these games? We're going to get into that after we hear from them. Football season might be over, but basketball is picking up steam, and all the pro and college hoops are going right now. March Madness is on the way as well. Lots of odds totals, player performances, props, anything you can think of where you want to know what is the odds to lay. BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting action. It doesn't necessarily have to be basketball either. It can be any kind of sports, hockey, boxing, UFC, pro soccer, anything out there that you want to put some action on, you can do it. BetOnline remains the best place for all of your sports scores and podcasts and news this season, next season, and every season. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action and get the news that you need to be smart about laying your odds at BetOnline, where the game starts. Matt, it's really, really popular today. Let's just tear everything down. Let's say goodbye to the most iconic stadium in the league, and let's just, let's go over by legends. Why not, right?
I mean, is Arrowhead an iconic stadium in the league?
It is to me.
Is GEHA Field an iconic?
Well, the field we're going to leave out of it, The high corner, like Crab Rangoon looking stadium is iconic to me.
That's one of the things that, is interesting to me because, yes, obviously we've been waiting to see when the starter's pistol was going to be fired on, the Chiefs' next home. Obviously, the Royals have already been in discussions, and those two are paired together because their leases run concurrently. They're going to be up at the same time. And Kansas City, Missouri has already really kind of, and the Royals have kind of gotten their ball started on their side, and what increasingly looks like a boulder heading towards downtown Kansas City. So the question is, what do the Chiefs do? Chiefs have 9 years to go on their lease at Arrowhead. And you look at the timeline, Buffalo, and the reason why this whole conversation has started is the Buffalo Bills, earlier this week, put together their plan that they're going to have a new stadium in Buffalo. It's going to keep the Bills there. What is it? 1.6 billion. I know the government's putting in like 800 million.
Yeah.
And with maintenance that has to be done too. They're putting in like 1.1. So the Chiefs are going to be looking for some handouts too. So, that's part of this as well. There's a lot to go with it. But the question honestly is going to come down to, can Kansas City and Jackson County keep the Royals in downtown Kansas City, Missouri, and keep the Chiefs in Jackson County in Kansas City, Missouri? That's going to be the difficult thing. And if you want it done, Bill Stadium's going to take 4 years to build. I think Los Angeles took like 6.
Right.
You guys start talking about it now because, if the Chiefs are going to have a new home, you guys start probably doing it in 2027, which means 5 years. That seems like no time to us, but that means it's time to start talking about the Chiefs and a new stadium.
And unfortunately, it is a game of logistics, not just getting the steel and everything that we've seen some issues with over the last 2 years with all of COVID and shipping right now from overseas as well. You'd hope that it's American-made steel and you can figure out the concrete from somewhere else. But it does come into the thing as well that this has always been, since its inception, a team that plays in Missouri. And for those of us that are from Kansas, we just have to deal with that. I think it is also the tax burden itself is part of the scenario here, and not having a tax burden in Kansas, I think actually gives them a bit of advantage in this back and forth that I think we're about to see over the next year or 3. But do you think that it comes down to a competitive thing, or is this just about kicking Jackson County back into gear?
Probably a little bit of both. I ultimately, Chiefs are a business. Let's face it. They are. And I think that all things being equal, they're going to make whatever's the best business decision. So if a developer and a government on the Kansas side of the state line comes up with a deal that's better than what's on the Missouri side, there's pretty good chance that something gets done. But at the same time, Missouri, I think, is going to be a force because Missouri's already lost one NFL team. They lost it twice. I don't think Missouri wants to lose a third NFL team. And so from a state level, and this is where, things are going to get very, very complicated, and certainly the reason why we're talking about this is that, hey, the Chiefs, Mark Donovan told us that, hey, developers are coming to the Chiefs with plans. This isn't the Chiefs necessarily going out and looking for a deal yet, but it's at this point been developers coming to the Chiefs and saying, hey, we got some ideas in Kansas. We'd like to see you come do this. But ultimately, it's going to be about power and control. You look at around the league, and it's not the same way. Things are not being done the same way that when Arrowhead was built in the 70s, or when Arrowhead was remodeled, 15 years ago.
Mhm.
It's a different era now. It's teams want control of their stadium, the parking lots, and the land around the stadium. They don't want to share it with anybody. So that's going to be one aspect. And that's one area where if the Royals move downtown, I think that the Chiefs have a real advantage of staying in Kansas City, Missouri, because if they could get control, I think that the Chiefs, if they got control of the entire Jackson County sports complex, which meant knocking down Kauffman Stadium and building a new Arrowhead next door, and then they took over everything else, and they could do like the New England Patriots and build a shopping mall and a hospital and movie theater and everything next door. They do that because it's all about the money. So I mean, and that's where it's going to be. I mean, it's going to be whomever puts together a deal that gives the Chiefs all the power and economic flexibility that they want.
And flexibility is good for the sport. It's good for the business that Clark Hunt runs. My question to you, though, is I don't think a Jerry Jones type Dallas complex can exist in Kansas City. Am I wrong?
I don't think you're wrong, but it's and certainly not from a standpoint of what Jerry Jones did building that. I mean, Dallas
Mhm.
was a little bit different in that. I mean, I think they got a little bit of money from the NFL Stadium Fund, but I'm not sure any public money went into that. I mean, that
Right.
was Jerry's ego. So that's and then Los Angeles, I mean, that was Stan Kroenke's ego. So that's going
Mhm.
to be a whole different thing. Uh, but the question to me, hey, there's a lot of questions, but one, I mean, hey, is this going to have a roof? Is it going to be a rolling roof? Is it a dome? Is it no roof at all? Play outdoors all the time? I mean, I think that's something that fans are going to care more about those kinds of things than the Chiefs are going to care about. Which the Chiefs are going to care about revenue streams. They're going to care about what they can put in there, what events that they can bring. And that's one thing that Jackson County did in that last lease, remember, with the Chiefs and the Royals, is they gave the Chiefs rather, a lot of flexibility and control when it came to that sports complex. So like the things that people in Kansas City have seen with like holiday lights and dinosaur exhibits and things like this, that was Jackson County telling the Chiefs, hey, you can use the facility to make money for all these events and everything. That's been a piece of the puzzle. So that's going to continue to be something. I mean, and that's whatever happens. I mean, it's going to be, to me, maybe a little bit like a Jerry world, in that they wanted to be a part of a bigger economic development. But
Mhm.
this isn't going to be build it and hope that they come. This is going to be, the Chiefs are going to be the driver of that,
Yeah.
Hunt Enterprises is going to be the driver of that, not the city.
And you nailed it on one thing that I think is paramount, and I will only question you because I don't think it's just the fans. This has to be a stadium that has a partially removable roof, no matter what, in my opinion, because the goal is to get a Super Bowl in Kansas City, and to do that, you're gonna have to have a roof. That the economic impact of a single Super Bowl in town is probably more than we can even put together with 3 or 4 seasons worth of playoff games held at home every time. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're not wrong, and I mean, and that would definitely be the selling point for getting that done is if you can get, because remember the NFL had promised Kansas City a Super Bowl if they put a roof on during the renovations.
Mhm.
There's no guarantee that putting on a roof will get you a Super Bowl. But beyond that, honestly, I mean, the Chiefs would I think want a roof on that, because they're not looking at just Super Bowls. I mean, this is a team, hey, that they look beyond that. I mean, they're looking at World Cups. They're looking at Final Fours. I mean, Mark Donovan's got his eyes on anything that he can put in that stadium, and
Yep.
a roof would definitely be a big part of that.
Well, even the concert series alone that we see all summer long, that could go on year round if you're in a domed stadium, a roofed stadium. So I know folks don't want to hear that, but we're trying to give you the odds on full look at this right now, even though this will probably be something that fades and comes back. But for right now, Chiefs are in Missouri at home where they need to be. I'd like to see like a little mini stadium stay, like just like an intimate venue. I like that. Um, maybe they could turn it into a theater. That's what I would try to do. But there's a lot to come. We'll have more for you tomorrow when we get into if any news happens and what the next steps are. The draft guide is shaping up over at rogueapc.com. Make sure you check that out. And there are a lot of takeaways for the Kansas City Chiefs. Matt, thank you for setting us straight on all the economic stuff that I don't cover very well, and walking us through what might be some of the next Chiefs to join the team. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take care, everybody.
Folks, have a great day. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Check out our sponsors and hit Rogue APC. I'll talk to you tomorrow.